We got China. Yes, your walk-on song is quite good. Our cover today is China Turns the Sand Green. Look at that cover shot. No problem, comrade. Least I could do. Bullying won't work. Pezeshkian warns as he meets the Pakistan army chief. Iranian President Mossad Pezeshkian has stated that United States must abandon its reliance on force and bullying, warning that such an approach will only complicate efforts to implement the Memorandum of Understanding and resolve regional issues. In a meeting on Monday night with Pakistan's Army Chief and Chief of Defense Forces, Field Marshal Asim Munir, Pezeshkian expressed appreciation for Islamabad's constructive role in mediating and promote regional peace and security. He voiced hope that sustained political will and cooperation would help achieve the goals outlined in the Pakistan-brokered MOU. Quote, the United States must correct its tone and approach in interacting with Iran, the president said. Relying on coercion and bullying will only make the implementation process more complicated. Unquote. The Iranian president underscored that Washington is obliged to honor its commitments to the Islamic Republic of Iran in line with the legitimate rights and international norms, Press TV reports. Also from Press TV reporting, Hamas, Israel is systematically destroying all means of life in Gaza. The Israeli regime is deliberately wiping out every condition for survival in the Gaza Strip by targeting critical civilian infrastructure, Hamas has said, after Israeli occupation warplanes bombed a desalination plant vital to thirsty residents. Notice how Press TV actually, reports from the resistance? In a statement on Monday, Hamas spokesperson Hazim Qassem condemned the airstrike on the Al Ridwan water desalination station in Gaza City's Sheikh Radwan neighborhood as a continuation of the Zionist entity's genocidal war against the Palestinian people. The attack, carried out by Israeli fighter jets, also hit a nearby mosque and destroyed tents sheltering displaced families. The targeting and destroying the desalination plant is part of the ongoing genocide and an attempt to erase all facilities and means of life in Gaza, Qassem said. He stressed that the intensified bombardment of crowded displacement camps and the deliberate destruction of tents prove the occupation regime is still pursuing its criminal plan of forced displacement and ethnic cleansing of Palestinians. The Hamas official highlighted that these widespread aggressions mark the peak of the Israeli regime's blatant disregard for the ceasefire agreement signed by US President Donald Trump and the leaders of Egypt, Turkey, and Qatar. Press TV reports. Stoic, welcome in. All right, on to some Russian news now. Ukraine, Russian news. Former U.S. envoy on Ukrainian Kellogg calls for a mobilization of women in Ukraine. Probably a good indication that things are going really well, huh? In a highly fascist society, they're now calling for mobilization of women or being encouraged to. Actually, I've been seeing a lot of posters encouraging women to sign up now in Ukraine as well. Former U.S. President's special envoy on Ukraine, Keith Kellogg, has spoken out in favor of mobilizing women to serve in the armed forces of Ukraine. My daughter was a soldier. She graduated from the U.S. Military Academy and fought in Afghanistan. Do I believe that women should be mobilized into the army? My answer is yes, because they fight no worse than men. He told Ukraine's Naspravdi YouTube channel. It is very important that women, as part of society, on into service on both a personal and professional level. I don't see a problem, Kellogg added. TASS. Russian forces mop up large area near Zaporozhye region in Dolinka. Russia's troops are completing a mop-up operation in Melyi Shcherbaki, Mirny, in Nestoroyanka near Dolinka, and the Zaporozhye region, which the Russian Defense Ministry had been liberating the previous day. Military expert Marichenko told TASS. He said the operation is helping Russian forces envelope a Ukrainian group in Orikov. Merkjo told the TASS that after liberating Dolinka, Russian troops were tightening the encirclement around Ukrainian forces in the Orikov area. The Russian Defense Ministry reported the liberation of Dolinka in the Zaporozhye region in August 24th, TASS. So, Russia is still moving forward, taking areas in Donbass. To the relief of many of those residents in Donbass, by the way. Ukraine needs transitional administration, not just elections. I'm having a hard time understanding why DPRK is sending troops for Russia. Are they trying to gain Russia's favor? Isn't what Russia is doing an imperialist expansion? No. What Russia is doing is not an imperialist expansion. Imperialism isn't just fighting a war. Imperialism isn't just when a big power does something. And furthermore, Russia isn't the start of this war. Um, so, how, how do we start this? Let's start this by saying, first of all, imperialism is a particular social order where big, developed capitalist countries exploit the less developed countries, the ones that are still developing, that have been not still developing, that have been maldeveloped by colonial and imperialist interests in the past. And even when Russia was the Russian Tsarist Empire, um, they were an empire over their own lands, not in the capitalist sense, but they were an empire over their own lands. They were colonial over their own lands, but they didn't participate in the transatlantic slave trade. So Russia never became a highly developed country, and in many ways, it's still like recovering from maldevelopment. It's theory list. Theory, just like that, but with a list at the end. So it was only during the USSR that it became it was only during the theory list. like what there, thank you. It only it only became a more developed country after USSR, and that was done not by participating in imperialist exploitation, or again, even in the Tsarist era, it never participated in the transatlantic slave system. Russia that exists today is still a country that develops its own industrial capital to a massive degree and exports that and imports as well and trades on the market as a whole. So Russia is not engaged in the imperialist system like that. It tried to at one point become more of a political partner with much of the West, but they shut the door on that incredibly quickly. Like that door was slammed in Putin's face almost instantly. Which other countries like DPRK and China warned about as well. And then, Russia learned firsthand. At least that section of the leadership did. So, no, Russia, first of all, is not an imperialist power. The second question then you need to ask is, what is NATO? Well, NATO existed in order to destroy the USSR. Except there's a problem, right? It kind of did destroy the USSR, or at least it played a large role in the USSR being overthrown. And so Russia became a more capitalistic country, and it became a capitalist country that was, especially in the beginning before Putin became the leader, it was a capitalist country that was really just allowing the West to buy up all of its industry. It was selling things that the Soviets had built at like fire sale prices to the West for a while. And really what the West wanted to make it was like an extraction colony. Something like in Indonesia or somewhere else in Eastern Europe where it can just extract value from it. It can, it can just loot from it constantly. That's what it wanted to make Russia. So even after its socialist system was gone, NATO still existed to destroy Russia as long as it was sovereign. And Russia quickly realized this. And it's that's why you have to understand Russia in the context of it actually being an anti-imperialist power currently. Because as a sovereign power, it is the target of NATO, which is just an expression of like the military interests of the US allied imperialist powers, which are the only imperialist powers because they don't allow any other competing empire to exist. They wouldn't. World War II was essentially like the decision on that for them, right? Like with World War II, they had the choice. They had the choice to either say, fuck the public pressure and like we'll risk the public pressure and we'll instead go to war against USSR. And they could, and then what would have happened is Japan and Empire, or Japan and Germany would have built empires perhaps that were strong enough that would then cause another inter-imperialist war like you saw with World War One. But they didn't do that because instead they, for one, were worried about the political pressure at home, and two, they were worried about another World War One happening, and not so much because they were worried about like a lot of people dying in World War One. They didn't care so much about that, but what they cared about was that invited a lot of revolutionary upheaval. That's what that's where the Russian Revolution first broke out. So they were really worried about that. So they allied with the USSR until this competing rising imperialist power was dealt with, and then they turned against the USSR and re-enter, we should say, into the Cold War. So Russia is not an imperialist power. So now that we've established that, and we established that it is actually being threatened by NATO, what is the start of the Ukraine war then? Well, the start of the Ukraine war can be traced back really to the USSR being overthrown by, again, with large influence from the West and NATO forces, because regions that were just free to go back and forth, they all of a sudden became an independent country, which was really done and stoked by Western powers along the lines of hating Russian speaking people, hating Russian people. And that's why that at the same time empowers all kinds of Nazi ideas and Nazi forces. In the Ukraine, this is reflected in like the right sectors, Zvoboda, and a bunch of these other groups. And they are more and more empowered by the West until you get to a critical point in 2005 where George Bush, or who, I can't remember, I think it's like 2005, 2006. So there's a promise made to Ukraine that you will be able to join NATO, essentially, which then helps to further empower these fascist forces in Ukraine that are like, well, we're going to have the backing, we will have backing from the United States. And so these fascist forces kind of consolidate themselves, and then in 2014 they really gain the upper hand with more direct backing from the West. New Victoria Nuland and a bunch of other like U.S. delegates go there. These fascist forces actually start sniping people from the crowd, from these protesters, to try and like stoke all kinds of chaos, essentially. And as we know, the president that was democratically elected in fled the country, and these fascist backed forces are brought in. And as soon as they do that, they turn the entire military might of Ukraine, which before, by the way, Donbass and Russian speaking areas were being subject to fascist attacks. But now that they're in the government, they turn the entire might of the entire Ukrainian army on Russian speaking populations in the Donbass region, claiming that they were Russian separatists, when all they were Russian speaking people, many of whom saw themselves as Ukrainian speaking Russians. And so this is the start of it, 2014. So it didn't start with Russia declaring war on Ukraine, right? If we're being realistic, like this particular conflict starts with 2014 with Ukraine declaring war on the Donbass region. And then when it starts this ethnic cleansing campaign in Donbass, with the president of Ukraine at the time literally saying, our children will be going to schools while your children cower in the basements. Our children will be going to the schools. Right? So this is 2000, that's what I'm talking about, the Euromaidan coup. And then because of this, you have Crimea sees all this going on and decides that they're going to have a referendum to decide whether they're going to leave Ukraine and rejoin Russian and to join the Russian Federation, because much of Crimea is Russian speaking population, and they didn't want the same shit to happen to them as what was happening in Donbass. And actually their referendum was reported in Western media, where they had, it was like an 80% turnout, massive turnout, and 90% voted in favor of joining Russian Federation. And then this is called annexation. This is called illegal annexation. They accused Russian troops of occupying the area, but that's simply not true. There was never any more Russian troops in Crimea than usual. And there is usually some there because there is a naval base nearby. So there was no like armed troops. There was no like, people actually celebrated when the referendum was taking place, and after it passed, people were on the streets celebrating it.
I've got some literature
in like large numbers.
Change your whole way of thinking.
Chikles, thank you so much for the support. So, yeah. Since 2014, Ukraine is shelling these people in Donbass. And it's actually Russia that tries to mediate some sort of peace arrangement, because they're watching people get killed. And this is what's called the Minsk agreements, where Russia tries to bring it up to international bodies and say, look, Ukraine is bombing Russian-speaking people in Donbass. Not only that, they've de facto made the Russian language illegal in schools and in governments. Yo, Antifa groupie, thank you so much for the subscription. Appreciate that. So, like, you can't have the Russian language spoken to you when you go to get your driver's license done or something. Now you can't have the Russian language taught to you in school. And they're bombing people in Donbass. And so, like I say, Putin tries to bring this up to multiple international bodies. He even brings Ukraine to the table with Macron and other EU leaders and says, you know, we need to enter some sort of peace agreement. And Zelensky sat there the whole time during this making like faces at Putin, like making these snide faces and shit. And yeah, then and so Ukraine just, they kept on bombing. Despite the, because and part of it too was like they were trying to make like this deal with Russia, basically. And during this talk, Putin was saying, what you need to do is recognize the government that has been formed in Donbass, and you need to discuss with them and come to a peace agreement with them. And this is the thing that Zelensky like just laughed his way through. Yeah, exactly. Classic Putin. And so after years of this, from 2014 to what, 2022? And then Russia, at the request of people in Donbass, at the Donbass People's Republic, enters into the military operation against Ukraine. And ever since Russia entered into this military operation, like the reason why the West accuses them of moving so slow because they're just not doing good or whatever. No, they're moving slow because like their actual goal is to move into these areas, Donbass, etc., and form a military umbrella that will protect these people that have been getting bombed and getting drone struck since 2014. And that's why if you actually go and like talk to people in Donbass that are now under Russian occupation, you'll find many of them talk about how now there's a dramatic reduction in the amount of bombs and drones falling on them. Actually, one of her dear comrades who is part of TankTube historically, and Esha, she has done a very good documentary on this previously, where she literally went to Donbass and interviewed people herself. So I'm actually going to link that to you right here. Yeah, I'm a Bolo guy now. Great. So here, I'm going to link you to Esha's documentary. She literally goes to Donbass and talks to people. Yo, Collective TV! Yeah, they actually precede Zelensky. So the interesting thing, Paul, is welcome in Collective. Everybody, go follow Collective TV. Go follow Historically. Welcome in, comrades. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Good to see y'all.
Yes, they are communists.
Yes, they are communists. That's what happens when you get a big streak. Look at that. I've got all kinds of new sounds. It's lovely, isn't it? I've upgraded the stream significantly.
Fell through the cracks of society and had to go out and form a gang. A Juche gang.
A Juche gang. So something you should know, Paul, about Zelensky.
Bye, Larry. Go read Lenin.
is he actually before he became president, he actually used to do comedy and media. And part of his comedy was making fun of fascists in Ukraine. I don't want to play any of the bullshit comedy. I'm just talking about okay, fine. One video of the piano. This is supposed to be a Juche's day. We're just lost in the news because I had to talk about this. So Zelensky ran on a platform of actually normalizing with Russia. Because, like I say, he used to do comedy where he would be on the border of Ukraine, and he would basically he would like interview people and be like, "Hey, do you hate Ukrainian or do you hate Russian people?" And everyone would be like, "No, no," right? And he'd be like, "See, there's no racism here." And then he would go to the other side, on the Russian border side, and he would interview people and be like, "Nope, see, there's no hate here. These fascists are just trying to split our country apart." And that was like a big part of his comedy routine for like a long ass time. And he actually ran on a platform of he was going to normalize with Russia again. He was going to enter into diplomacy with Russia again. And then as soon as he got elected, he just was like the president that he replaced immediately. And kept the same thing going. The fascists got even more powerful under him. The thing I pointed out before is, there is an expansionist state in Ukraine. And it's not Russia. It's Ukraine. They literally want to make a greater Ukraine, which includes, by the way, not just going into Russian land, but they want to go into like Latvian land. They want to expand into like Belarusian land. Like they want to expand Ukraine itself. Lebensraum. That's Lebensraum. That's not what fucking Russia is doing. Russia's not just taking living space. The people were being bombed and asked Russia if there was anything they could do to help stop the fucking bombing that they were being subjected to. So, I hope that makes sense, Paul. I know that's a really long-winded response, but it's like a really complicated situation. Yeah, well, he's always been a grifter. Look at this. You tell me if this seems like someone who's a grifter to you, Paul. Let me know if this seems like grifter behavior. If there was peace with Russia without denazification, Poland would be invaded by Ukraine 100%. Yep. Yep. Ukraine it literally is spiritually Israeli in a sense, yeah. It's why I said revolutionary defeatism does not apply. I saw someone in chat say that earlier, but that's what I typed on my Twitter a while ago. Revolutionary defeatism does not apply to Russia because it is fighting an existential threat against its survival. Right? And you know what's really interesting, Paul? The Russian bourgeoisie doesn't actually benefit from this war. Unlike the West, which does, because the way the capitalist imperialist country works is it's like selling weapons to Ukraine and making a fucking killing from it, right? And then Ukraine, the corrupt, it's of course impoverishing the Ukrainian people, but the fascist forces and the bourgeoisie, the ruling class in Ukraine, are fucking making a killing. So they have an interest in this war just continuing on as well. The Russian bourgeoisie, because of the sanctions, because of the embargoes, they're actually not benefiting from this. It's continuing on because there's a mission. They actually have a military objective, which is to cripple the Ukrainian fascist military. Which is why they actually hit military targets. All Ukraine does is hit civilians. That's it. Because they can't hit legitimate military targets. They don't care to. Because their whole plan, just like any other imperialist power, their plan, which is, as an extension, a puppet of the United States, is just to cause as much terror on Russian civilians as possible to encourage an overthrow. Does that sound familiar? And we know how well that works, right? Like they tried that. Imperialist powers tried that everywhere. It was tried in Korea, Vietnam. Like that's just the tired old imperialist playbook. Cause terror until the population rises up against their own government, which rarely ever actually happens like that. Most of the time, it galvanizes a population. Yeah, it'll be good for you. Yeah, exactly. So, I know that was a long answer, but I do think that was important. I do think that is a good question that we should always answer when it comes up. Laney had a shocked chatter last night who couldn't believe we were condemning Ukraine. It's the litmus test of the left. If you want to be on the left, because to be on the left, you need to be anti-imperialist. To be on the left, you have to understand the role Ukraine plays in being a fascist proxy war. And a fascist proxy war that exists to try and destroy, destabilize, and break up Russia. That's why the US doesn't help Ukraine, because the war machine is more well, it does help Ukraine. It sends Ukraine everything it wants. It helps Ukraine in the same way it helps Israel.
The Sino-Soviet Empire swept the globe.
It has an interest, in a sense, in not being too direct with it, because it wants to control its escalation, right? It wants to make sure that it's at least trying not to stretch itself too thin, even though really it already is stretched way too thin. It really doesn't even have the resources to go in if it wanted. Like right now, that's the whole thing you have to realize with South Korea as well. The whole reason why Trump offered to reduce the war games is not because he just like feels bad or he actually cares about the war games, but it's because the U.S. is deeply fucking expended on their military equipment at the moment. And so they're trying to recover it any way they can, even by saying, "Oh well, we'll end the war games early." They'll do whatever they can. It's why the same reason why they're saying to Ukraine, you can't produce this or that. It's not because they don't want to help Ukraine. It's because they're like scrambling to actually keep up with what they're losing in due to Iran at the moment. But yeah, Ukraine is acting just like in Israel in the region in a sense. Here's the playlist about Slimane Mansour. His work is incredibly influential. Thank you, thank you. Allow me to save that. Thank you, Complainy. Thank you, thank you. Okay, actually, this guy here, this is a former Ukrainian prime minister. And he says Ukraine needs transitional administration, not just elections. He says holding elections alone will not bring about a change of regime in Ukraine, which instead requires serious talks with the United States, resulting in the creation of a transitional administration before elections can be organized. Former Ukrainian Prime Minister Nikolai Ezerov told TASS. He said that if elections were held under Ukraine's current political conditions, manipulation and fraud would allow representatives of the existing regime to come to power again. What difference will elections make now, in these circumstances? They will elect whoever needs to be elected. That is completely obvious. Will the current regime remain in place? Of course it will, Azarov said. To avoid such a scenario, in which the Kiev regime remains in place, very serious talks with the Americans are needed, along with arguments that could persuade the current US administration to make certain concrete compromises. What would those concrete compromises be? First and foremost, a transitional administration and elections overseen by certain bodies that would prevent Nazis from coming to power again. He concluded, TASS. So even there, you can see the former president of Ukraine is like, no, even if they hold elections, they'll still be fascists in power. There is two documentaries you could watch on it as well, Paul. They're older, but they're both good, especially to show to people who are not familiar with the situation. They're both by Oliver Stone. One's called Ukraine on Fire, and the other one's called Revealing Ukraine. Those are also really good to watch to understand what happened with 2014. It actually both of them are made before the Russian military operation. And you can see Oliver Stone, even in his liberal analysis, able to predict that a war is about to happen. So I think they are actually really good and good watches and revealing to a lot of people, especially now in hindsight. I got a piece here from Workers' World Party I want to share with you. How Iran will survive new draconian state sanctions. How will Iran survive the latest rounds of what President Donald Trump calls draconian sanctions that promise to be the most extreme strangulation ever imposed? Iran has developed highly sophisticated, high-tech, asymmetric, low-cost, well-hidden weapons to defend their country against U.S.-Israeli bombing. Now, even the U.S. corporate media admits that the vast number of U.S. bases throughout West Asia and the Persian Gulf are vulnerable and not sustainable. Iran has designed not only its military, but its entire economy for over 47 years to withstand U.S. sanctions. U.S. sanctions are designed to strangle the economy economically, deny technical development and modernization, and through chronic shortages, instigate uprisings and division in the population. Iran is approaching 200 days of this stage of U.S. instigated war. Harsh rounds of new sanctions, a blockade, and targeted attacks on civilian infrastructure. But in reality, Iran has withstood 47 years, over 17,000 days of sanctions, and deliberate efforts to overturn its Islamic Republic. Through sanctions, the U.S. has blocked $120 billion of Iran's assets. Iran has not only survived, it has managed to build a modern industrial society with a healthily and highly educated population. Iran is in the top tier globally, and number of scientific, technical, and engineering graduates, more than half of these graduates are women. To survive economically, Iran has turned to numerous alternative routes, trucking goods from neighboring Pakistan and Turkey, as well as shipping cargo from Russia, an ally through the Caspian Sea, while sending oil by high-speed train to China, a key trading partner. Iran has relied on decades of decentralized exchange networks, barter agreements, and what is called hawala, an informal trust-based funds of equivalent transfer system dating back to the 9th century, and on modern cryptocurrency to maintain cross-border trade. These alternative systems have supplied the Iranian economy with a wide variety of consumer goods, foods, essential medicines, and industrial materials. While these tactics might seem expensive and cumbersome, they exist outside the measurements and constraints of the US dollar-dominated global economy. These unofficial exchanges continue to function, even when countries and banking institutions officially submit to US sanctions. Thousands of small merchants and traders across many borders make their own rules. Workers' World Party. A great article right there. Great to see you, Nah. Alright, we got Breaking on X thing. Vietnam concert. Speaking of heavy rain. 20 to 30,000 Vietnamese, mostly Gen X, gather in a national concert, Fatherland in Your Heart, to watch revolutionary music, red music, revived in modern music mix under the heavy rain. Look at the pictures. I love the soldier standing there saluting with the umbrella. There's the people having a good time. And you can actually watch this for yourself. Maybe we'll watch the whole thing one day. But look, here it is here. Wow. Holy. Nồi lửa lên nè. Nồi lửa lên em, nồi lửa lên em. Đồng bào ơi,
rồi khơi bếp hồng lên nhé. Lá nếp rau rừng
Yo.
tình anh nuôi, rồi lừa lên em đánh mỹ đêm ngày. Vũ trụ theo ta vào trong chiến trận, có chị Hằng soi sáng canh thầu. Ơi miền Nam mới có đêm nào ngủ được, lửa chiến tranh còn bỏng đất quê mình. Yêu đất nước trải đường vô trong nỡ, đây tuyến hậu cần ta vùi lơi khắp nơi nơi.
I love that drop, that like drop.
Đâu có là tên lửa, chỉ bếp than hồng này ủ kín hơi cơm, bát nước chè xanh nhẹ gối bước dồn thêm sức mạnh trên đường đi đánh Mỹ. Nồi lửa lên em, nồi lửa lên em, ánh trăng sáng ngời đưa ta vào trận đánh núi rừng xanh dồn dập bước quân hành. Lửa bếp than hồng mang tình em rực sáng, sáng quê hương. Giơ cao tay lên nào. Tôi muốn thấy tất cả những đèn flash được bật lên. Guitar. Yes. Đất nước tưng bừng nghe tiếng rừng thao thức, khơi ánh lửa hồng bên suối đàn từng reo, rồi lửa lên em miếng nước ngọt ngào. Muối đậm quê hương tình thương chiến trận, phút ngọt bùi nhớ năm cơm ngọt. Ơi miền Nam mới những đêm trăng đuốc đèn, lửa trong tim rừng rực sáng trên đường. Đôi quang cánh nặng tình yêu đất nước,
So good.
cầm ta sưởi ấm nơi nơi.
G-string is not doing its job. I don't know why.
Chúa đó cung đường vất vả.
G-string is sleeping.
Rừng còn phủ kín hơi cơm, nhớ năm gạo rang đường ra chiến trận, ôi tất cả tâm tình đi nhớ mãi. Nồi lửa lên em, nồi lửa lên em, đất nước tưng bừng đưa ta vào trận đánh núi rừng xanh dồn dập bước quân hành. Lửa cháy lên rồi mang tình em rực sáng, sáng quê hương. Nồi lửa lên em, nồi lửa lên em, nồi lửa lên em, nồi lửa lên em, nồi lửa lên em.
So good.
Cảm ơn.
Damn, that was good. Here. This is a link to the whole thing if you want to watch that later. Damn, that was amazing. Really good. Yeah, really good stage too. Wait, I forgot I closed the thing. Interesting. Iran commemorates leader's martyred daughter. A commemoration ceremony was held at the mosque of the Sharif University of Technology for the martyred daughter of the martyred leader of the Islamic Revolution on Monday. Press TV reports. Salute to Keimani and his martyred family. That's from Press TV. We have, what do you think's going on here? Well, I'll do this one first. China transitioning to bamboo. In China, more products are transitioning to plastics made from bamboo. It fully biodegrades in 5 months and doesn't create forever plastics. Look at this. Bamboo replacing plastics. That's good, like that's like good what do you call that show? How's it made? You know, that's like some good how's it made. Fuck, I keep fucking closing the damn tab. I'm a real professional news reporter. Hey, I might swear, but I don't use ableist language like some news reporters, at least. You know, which just makes it cringe. US's corn plastic stuff, I bet bamboo is more robust and similarly biodegradable. Yeah. Maybe easier to work with, I think I've heard. Alright, we'll do this one here as well. Mamdani endorses Hakeem Jeffries. Power to the people asks, Mamdani moments ago just once again backed Hakeem Jeffries for speaker. Quote, I continue to support Jeffries and his bid to become the leader. AOC also supports Jeffries. How can anyone believe in the project of reform, the Democratic Party, when the people who run on reforming it back corrupt corporate politicians for leadership? Proud socialist ass. And here he is here.
I first wanted to just get your reaction to Times reporting on Hakeem Jeffries meeting with Jared Kushner. I mean, what do you think of Jeffries potentially being speaker in light of this? And then my second question
I will do that, Samuel.
2 weeks until the first day of school, and there's still no AI policy, and principals aren't supposed to buy new tech until there is one. So can you just give any update to that? Will it be coming in the next few days? I know this is a stressful issue for schools.
It is, and it is an issue of
Juche is
immense
what's
importance
happened
to
on
us
this
in the
planet,
administration,
y'all.
and it is an issue that we will be speaking to soon. And to your first question, I continue to support Congressman Jeffries and his bid to become the leader.
All right.
Liberal.
Thank you, Sintel. You're gonna need that after. Okay, this one here. This X post points out that on June 4th, 10 days before Mitch McConnell disappeared, he spent nearly 20 hours on the Senate floor, frozen in place. Actually, I'll do it like this so that you can see it better. Watch him up there in the corner. See, you can see him in the top middle there. Watch how still he is, and this is going in fast motion.
Time after time, if you're lost, you can look and you will find me. Time after time, if you fall, I will catch you. I'll be waiting. Time after time.
Is this like a Weekend at Bernie's situation happening here? That's what I'm wondering, Mana. Is this a Weekend at Bernie's situation? It's just like this incredible stillness. out of him. Well, they said it was just under 20 hours. All right. Oh, and then the last thing, disturbing to say the least, yeah. And then the last thing, you're gonna want the BS. You're gonna want to use the BS on this one. Piker interviews with Zionist whitewashing outlet. Hassan Piker sits down with Israel's most effective whitewashing outlet, Haaretz, to give an interview. Yo, Akira, thank you so much for the 840 redeem. I will need that after reading this news. So, I don't know if they are, Sam. I'm not following it close enough, but I believe that they are kind of still pretending. So, he sat down and gave an interview with Haaretz, which normalizes Zionism, which has been denounced by Palestinian resistance as an act of betrayal. Interviewing with pro-Zionist rag is whitewashing. It's normalization. So there he goes. And here's Haaretz even reporting on it too. And here, do you see what he does here too? I don't want any harm committed against random citizens, whether they be Jewish or Muslim. Is the quote they clip from him there. Ready for backlash? Hassan Piker sits down for his first interview with an Israeli outlet. I mean, and you see what else is this a fight between Jewish people and Muslim people? Ultimately. A politically themed entertainer regularly messaged to his audience about the current events and the focus on saving Democratic Party from what believes to be their worst tendency. He's not as witty or politically educated as he seems to think he is, and gets furious when his audience doesn't respond in the way he feels they should. Am I describing Bill Maher or Hassan Piker? What was in the interview? Haaretz can't be any more normalized than it is, in my honest opinion. I've heard him trash Haaretz all the time as a rag on stream. Then why would he go on Haaretz? Obvious careerism. That's what I'm saying. It doesn't matter what is said in it. Just going on Haaretz normalizes it. Like that's terrible, you know? What a fucking decision. And again, most importantly, Palestinian resistance has asked people not to engage in that type of normalization. Giving a platform to Zionist talking points on your in your audience that you're trying to foster anti-Zionist sentiments is ridiculous. You're causing confusion. You're allowing people to think that there is a liberal Zionism that can exist, that it actually will exist alongside of the Palestinians. But that ignores that Zionism is a political ideology which exists expressly, purely on the foundation of genocide. I mean, even then, it's one thing to have someone on your platform and interview them in a hostile interview. But how are you going to go on to there's a lot to extrapolate just from platformism. How are you going to go on to an Israeli media and you can't give a hostile response, really, because they can just clip you out of context easily enough. Like, it's not an interview like that. It's like a magazine. Headlines from socialist countries. Up next. China's Women Federation supports Lao women vocational training. The All China Women's Federation, ACWF, has provided vocational training equipment worth 800,000 yuan, about 2.72 billion kip, to the Lao Women's Union, LWU, strengthening skills development for Lao women. The equipment was handed over on August 24th by Dr. Wang Chang, charges to affairs of the Chinese embassy in Laos, to Mrs. Ali Vongnorbatam, member of the party central committee and president of the LWU. The 15 types of equipment will support training in garment and tailoring, beauty and cosmetology, and food and culinary preparation. Part of the equipment will also be distributed to provincial vocational training centers. Mrs. Ali expressed appreciation to the ACWF and the Chinese embassy for the assistance, saying it would improve modern teaching methods and meet trainees' practical needs. The support contributes to the Lao Women's Development Plan 2026-2030, particularly efforts to develop women with vocational skills, expand employment opportunities, and support their development as micro, small, and medium entrepreneurs. Exactly. Exactly, no. That's exactly, I guess, my central point on why I don't see any point. There's no point in going on to that. You're much like Zionism is already on the back foot. Why would you go on a liberal Zionist that's literally trying to do a rescue job on Israel? It makes no sense. Dignity. This is now from Cuba, Grinma News. The dignity, independence, and sovereignty of Cuba have also been defended by its women. The dignity, independence, and sovereignty of Cuba have also been built by its women. These 66 years signify that Cuban women would have ceased to be spectators and have become protagonists of their own history. This was affirmed in this province by the member of the Political Bureau and General Secretary of the Federation of Cuban Women, FMC, Teresa Emerald Boye, during the main event commemorating this new anniversary of their organization on August 23rd. Emerald Boye also recalled that the triumph of the revolution and the emergence of the FMC, the Federation of Cuban Women, meant that millions of women had the opportunity to study, work, improve themselves, research, produce, and lead in all areas of the economic, political, social, and cultural life of our country. Currently, we are the majority in sectors such as education, health, science, and the judicial system, among others. She said, adding that there is an increasingly greater female presence in the non-state sector, in agricultural production cooperatives, and in access to leadership positions. The General Secretary of the FMC also addressed the main challenges facing the organization, in a context marked by intensification of the U.S. blockade, which severely impacts the lives of the Cuban people. We must pay special attention to vulnerable individuals and families, and contribute together with the relevant institutions to finding solutions. We must focus particularly on our young women, who are not in school or work. It is essential to continue working for gender equality and the prevention of violence, she emphasized. During the event held at the Hermanos Cruz People's Council, awards were presented to the provinces of Artesia, Matanzas, Cienfuegos, and Villa Clara, all recognized for the outstanding work with the FMC and the Pinar del Rio, which received the National Vanguard designation. From Grandma News. It's okay. It's okay. They're only laughing because it's not a strike against you or nothing against you. Our auto mod is much more lighthearted than that. Our auto mod is purely for comfort reasons. At least our custom one, I should say. Here's from Vietnam for you. Chop Mat Tower, symbol of Oak Eo civilization in Tan Ninh. Look at this thing. Amazing. Amidst the landscape of modern-day Tan Ninh, Chop Mat Tower stands quietly, preserving traces of the ancient Oak Eo civilization, offering a glimpse into the cultural world that once flourished across southern Vietnam. With its distinctive brick architecture and enduring historical value, the tower is not only an important archaeological relic, but also a potential destination for visitors interested in the region's cultural heritage. V&A photos. Damn. That's cool. We've got a couple stories from China. China aided cancer treatment center breaks ground in Tunisia. A China-aided cancer treatment center project in Tunisia was launched on Sunday in Gabes, a city in southeastern Tunisia. During the groundbreaking ceremony, Walid Nejia, Director General at the Health and the Tunisia Ministry of Health, said in his address that Tunisia and China enjoy a deep friendship and maintain a high degree of mutual trust. The launch of the project demonstrates the dynamic and growing cooperation between the two countries, he said. Adding that once completed, the center will enable people in southeastern Tunisia to access high quality cancer treatment and care more conveniently. Liang Jiang, counselor in charge of the economic and commercial affairs of the Chinese embassy in Tunisia, said that the project's commitment is a concrete action to strengthen pragmatic cooperation between the two countries and manifestation of the deep friendship between the people of the two countries. Isn't that amazing? The US would never. So tell me again about China's debt trap or whatever the fuck. Or no, how about you read Carlos Martinez instead? Because he pushes back against that kind of bullshit. How China turns the sand green, taking its ecological playbook global. Leveraging decades of domestic restoration and a long-standing commitment to sharing its expertise abroad, Beijing is using the China corner at the ongoing 17th session of the Conference of the Parties, COP17, to the UN Convention of Combat Desertification, UNCCD, to showcase its environmental playbook. An effort UNCCD chief Yasmin Fowd called one of the clearest large-scale examples of how land degradation can be reserved. Along the southeastern edge of China's Tangar Desert, grids of straw woven into the shifting stands are holding back dunes that might otherwise creep southward. Pioneered in the 1950s, the technique helped Ningxia Hui Autonomous Region, a landlocked region hemmed in by deserts on three sides in northwestern China, become the country's first provincial-level region to reverse desertification. One of the countries most severely affected by desertification, China has vast arid heartlands, spanning the northwest, north, and northeast, leading Beijing to launch the Three North Shelter Belt Forest Program, TSFP, in 1978, to curb the spread of deserts and restore degraded land. Today, China has brought 53% of its treatable degraded land under management, accounting for roughly a quarter of the world's newly added green areas in recent years. In Yangtze Barren Dunes now host solar arrays, desert tourism hubs. In neighboring Jiangsu province, sand-dwelling crops like cistanche and desert onions anchor the commercial ecosystem of more than 100 agricultural enterprises. Along the southern edge of the Sahara, China's experience with the TSFP has helped shape the African Union's Great Green Wall Initiative, launched in 2007 to restore 100 million hectares of degraded land across the Sahel-Sahara region and create 10 million green jobs by 2030. CGTN. Kirby, welcome in. There you go. More, again, China putting the work in. I have an article from DPRK for you today. This will be a good transition into Juche's Day proper now. In the DPRK, this one is called Beauty Peculiar to Korean Women. In the DPRK, women make a great contribution to the prosperity of the country and the development of society. A century ago, Korean women were known as a synonym for the misfortune and privation as they were subjected to all manner of inequality, subordination, contempt, and maltreatment. But they have radically improved their social status and role and pushed ahead with the revolution in construction along with the development of the DPRK. Each page of the DPRK's history records the feats of women who have credibly worked at different posts of the revolution and socialist construction like men. They include those who contributed to creating the legend of war victory by fighting undauntedly, both on the front and in the rear, in the period of the fierce Fatherland Liberation War. Exalted their honor as red motivators in the Chomila movement pioneered in the Komila era. Defended socialism while overcoming difficulties with strong will in the 1990s. Women performed their jobs at scientific research bases and grand construction sites, as well as in agriculture and light industry. Sectors in the front ranks of the materialist persons of patriotism, who stirred up the times, and, of course, this also included women. Though shouldering heavy responsibilities for looking after their families while doing their jobs, women, as mothers, did not mind taking any pains to bring up well their children, the future of the country. The women who were ordinary and simple, yet strongest in the face of hardships, brought up many excellent heroes across the country. Nowadays, many women have volunteered to work in the difficult and labor-consuming sectors at the call of their country to perform feats for the prosperity instead of living as housewives. Those in Gangwon province, for example, unhesitatingly volunteered to work at the construction site of several power stations at the beginning of the projects to contribute to the building of power stations with the willpower of self-reliance and inexhaustible strength. Whenever they were faced with difficulties in those days, the women gathered up their strength and courage, singing the song We Are Koreans, reflecting the indomitable spirit and image of the tough-minded Koreans. The world will see what a power we will build, by dint of our strength we firmly believe in and our love for the future. As shown by the words of the strong reflecting our feelings, we felt patriotic pride and pleasure in always making devoted efforts to do well whatever the party decision to do and attaches importance to it, they say in unison. Their love for their country, socialism, and future. This is the source of the miraculous strength that makes the Korean women undaunted by any hardship. The strength of such love makes the women so strong, and herein lies the beauty peculiar to them. Pyongyang Times. See, I love that. They drew you in with the beauty, and then it turns out what they're talking about is strength. And we know the strength of love is important because, well, revolution, the aim of revolution is to bring love for the people into bloom. My ad thing doesn't work. We got an ad coming up in 5 minutes, comrades. If you would like to support the stream, if you would like to avoid the ads, think about subscribing. Or using your Jeff Bezos Prime gift subby here, and then you will avoid any advertisements that's coming up in about 5 minutes. Also, you might see some naked chatters in the chat. If you see any naked chatters, and you perhaps have a few dollars you can spare to help out the Leaping Larry stream, perhaps you could clothe one of our comrades with a gift badge and allow them to avoid the ads. Biddies are also very much welcome. Direct donations. And we even have a merch store now. Which includes, by the way, a mug with that quote on it. See? The merch store has this mug. The aim of revolution is to bring love for the people into bloom. And then it's got Kim Jong-il on this side of it. So you've got ways you can support. There's direct donations. I think if you type in or PayPal or something. Yeah, PayPal. There's the Ko-Fi right there. Or you could gift sub, all various ways to support. Otherwise, those who get stuck in ad hell, I feel for you and we will see you soon.
Hey, this guy's a commie! Commie! Traitor to our country!
Yo, Weebcore, thank you so much for gifting a sub to Kevin Kirby. Your support means a ton, comrade. Thank you. And that means we are... What? We're like 16 subs away now. 16 subs from extending the stream and watching a DPRK movie watch-along. Torch lighting ceremony. This is the Socialist Sports Report now. The torch lighting ceremony of the International Martial Arts Games held in Pyongyang. Hell yes. A torch lighting ceremony of the 10th International Martial Arts Games took place in Pyongyang on April 21st. The torch lit at the Martial Arts Torch Tower at the Sports Village in Chungcheon Street will be brought to light the cauldron in the opening ceremony venue of the 10th International Martial Arts Games to be held in Bishkek, Kyrgyzstan in October this year. So it's lit here, and then they're going to carry the flame to Kyrgyzstan. Present at the ceremony were Kim Kum-chol, member of the National Sports Guidance Committee and Secretary General of the Cabinet, Kim Rung-gun, chairman of the Korean Taekwondo Committee, Taekwondo instructors, and players, teachers, and students of the Pyongyang Municipal Taekwondo College, and working people in Pyongyang. Also seen there were members of the Diplomatic Corps in Pyongyang. Ri Rung-son, chairman of the International Martial Arts Games Committee and president of the International Taekwondo Federation, made a speech. The chairman of the Korean Taekwondo Committee, who is a Secretary General of the International Martial Arts Games Committee, lit and handed the torch for the games to torchbearers. Then followed Taekwondo Wushu and karate demonstrations, which you can see right here. Is it bad? Nah, it's not bad. You learn something new every day. I would say that's good. Learning something new is always good. And today in the Tankie Times, I give you two quotes from a little-known Georgian philosopher. One because of all of the celebration of revolutionary women, and one that sort of follows on from yesterday's quote. So Iosif says here, nor can we regard as an answer the opinion of other half-baked Marxists, who think that the thing to do would be to assume power and to expropriate the small and medium rural producers, and to socialize their means of production. Marxists cannot adopt this senseless and criminal course either, because it would destroy all chances of victory for the proletarian revolution, and it would throw the peasantry into the camp of the enemies of the proletariat for a long time. And our comrade Iosif also said that not a single great movement of the oppressed in the history of mankind has been able to do without the participation of working women. Yeah, and another one that I know of as well, it reminds me of another Georgian philosopher known as Koba Samio says. And another Georgian philosopher I'm familiar with as well, named K. Solon. Georgia's just producing a lot of revolutionary philosophers, apparently. And that's your Tankie Times news for today. And of course, you can get all of the episodes, all of them, all of the articles by typing news into my chat. And that will take you to the Tankie Times headlines right here. Our comrade has written out a whole thing here. Look. It's amazing. It looks so good. I love how good everything looks on here now. It's amazing. You got the archive so you can get all of the issues in case you missed any. And you can also find this on my beacons now too, because I actually have updated my beacons page. No, I'm happy. I'm happy to do what I can for the comrades. I'm here to serve you, comrades. Look, see, I updated my beacon, so now my Twitch is here, my Kick's here, there's my YouTube, there's the Tankie Times, YouTube, Billy Gaming YouTube, the PRF Discord, my Blue Sky, Juche Gang Facebook, Socialist Schoolhouse Facebook, DPRK of Korea's Beautiful Facebook, Peace Land and Bread, Iskra Books, my Instagram. There's the products at the fourth wall page, and you can even feed me from here. You can also support me through Ko-Fi right from this page as well. So please feel free to share this around as well.